Welcome to a new video on XR650R. And what we're going to do here with this bike is we're going to try to return it to some sort of stock condition. The bike's been modified and it basically added everything you can add to an XR650. In the parts bag that I got with this bike, it had like 2 desert tanks. It had a piston, which may or may not mean that this piston and cylinder's been out. Now, I've cleaned it once. It was super filthy when I got it. But what we're going to do is we're going to install, it has a Baja Designs kit. All right, and so, that's okay. The Baja kit's okay. The Baja kit, some people swear by them. But it's also got some sort of, bolting kit here. And I think it has to do with the turn signals for the Baja kit, but I don't see why. Got little brackets here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to really clean this thing up and restore it to, its original shape. And I'm going to install a new street legal kit. And that will get me, I think, a little bit further. I like the Tusk kit. It has it retains a real nice look on the fender. But then there's like a under fender that comes out here that has a light and then a plate holder. Similar turn signal brackets. Actually, I don't even know if I think they might even just go right into the plastic, but probably got a new fender going to be on here because I can't stand this. I just can't stand it. This is going to go away. And I know there's some people that say, oh my gosh, that's just you're taking everything off I'd put on it, which is probably true. But I don't like aftermarket modifications, you might say. Like this really nice chain guard here. I'm going to put the original one on. I'm going to get probably an original skid plate, but I might leave this skid plate because it is really protective. And I will leave the exhaust. I'm going to have to go through the carburetor. I put gas to the carburetor and it overflowed, so I know that the needle and seat, something's going on there. And now it won't start, and it feels like it's got like no compression. And so I'm just going to go, I went through the simple first steps, which is I adjusted the valves. And these intake valves were tight. I mean, that valve was open. Both of them were open. And how this thing ever ran before, I don't know. So I adjusted these out, and they are perfect. I'm going to pull this carburetor. I'm going to verify what jetting's in there. And I'm sure it has a little bit of jetting modification for this exhaust pipe. And then I'm going to start ordering some of the stock parts again, maybe a whole plastic kit. Some graphics, the original graphics if I can find them. If not, maybe something that's a kind of a look-alike. And the question is, I'm going to take all of this steering stabilizer. I have ordered a top triple tree top fork clamp here, which is going to be the 7/8 size, so these bars are going to go away, and I'm going to get back to the original 7/8. Now I'm going to retain the Trail Tech because I really like the Trail Tech on a street legal. And I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do on a headlight. Now I might keep the Baja headlight. There are broken straps, so I'm going to have to order those if that's the case, if that's the angle I'm going to go. But I also might do just a regular front number plate or headlight, whatever came stock on it, and then supplement it. Or if it's got the headlight, I haven't even looked into that yet, that'll be fine for me, because I am on the minimalist street legal. In fact, I will eventually, these tires are in fine shape, but I eventually just go to full knobbies. Here in Nevada, you know, as long as you've got, the only time I've ever gotten pulled over in Nevada with any of my street legal Enduros that I built was when I was riding it for the first time with no rear view mirrors, and I went right by a motorcycle cop, and he just immediately flipped a U-turn and came right after me. It was the day after I registered it. I was on the road the first time, and I got pulled over. And then from there on, I've never been pulled over and run full knobbies. They don't even know what is a street legal enduro tire and what is a full-blown knobby. So we're going to have a lot of fun with this. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it, and it's going to come out looking so beautiful and original with a real clean street legal kit. It's always fun to do something I've never done. I've never had an XR650R, so here we go. All right, all right. Die a little bit, so I got some tuning to do. And I think it's out of gas now, but I should be able to get it tuned and up all that gas in there if I can. She's about ready to die. Betsy, chew up all that gas in there. There we go. So she runs. Now we just got to fix the carburetor's got to come off because it's overflowing. And I tapped on the carburetor like everybody does, and half the time that fixes it and half the time it doesn't. But I do want to verify the jetting, so we're going to get that all off. Now we're going to finally be able to check the oil, because the oil stick, dipstick, is right there. And it's another reason I want this steering dampener off. It's weight, but it's also this right here interferes with your dipstick. You really don't see the dipstick coming out that often anyway, but there's a little, if you can see it, there's a little cutout, but it's not enough. But you can't check the oil until the engine has been run for 5 minutes. So let me unscrew it and we'll see what it is, what it's sitting at. All right, let's dip this in. And it's at the upper mark. It looks really good. No telling how long it's been in there though. But it's encouraging that it runs and the oil looks good. The carburetor came out real easy because it has this bracket that you can remove from the carburetor, so you're not dealing with the 10mm bolts typically to loosen the cable enough to get it off. And then there's just some drain lines and a couple of bands on either side of the carburetor. So I've got the carburetor off, and first is to get all these tubes off. Now, with the tubes off, let's get the float bowl off. Well, I can tell somebody's been in here. It looks like this tang has been bent to hell, and the float level seems really low. I mean, it's sticking up high, which means it would ride low in the bowl, and I think that's probably because they were trying to get it to shut off earlier because it was leaking. So let's get some specs and figure out where that float level is. I don't know if you can see in there, but there is a big speck. There it is. Big piece of black something. And that could have been wedged between the needle and the seat. The carb is apart and I'm putting it back together. I pulled out the pilot, pulled out the main jet, pulled out the needle to check what slot it was, what the clip slot was. And what I found was the stock pilot is 175, or the stock main jet, and what was in the carburetor and what I'm putting back in is a 172, which kind of makes sense. I'm at 4,500 altitude here in Nevada, so the 172, I'm just going to go with maybe they knew what they were doing. The pilot is stock a 65. They have a 68. Now I know on my CRF 450s, I had jumped up the pilot a little bit. It made it idle better, run better. So I saved the same clip setting. It was on the third clip and I just put it right back in. And what we're doing is we're going to try to work on the needle and the seat. So I have, that is an extra that came, that I have in the kit, and then here's another one that came in the carburetor. So I'm going to put this one back in. I've really looked at it, and it looks to me like it's not got any, see if I can get the thing to, there we go. Doesn't have any like slots or cuts or areas where there's like a ring. It's flat and it's rubber, so it should seal. And then I'm doing what I always do, take a little glass cooktop and I chuck up a Q-tip and I drill into the seat to polish the brass and get it clean. And boy, that is dirty, but most of that is just tarnish from the brass. So we're going to put this back together and we're going to bench test it for the float. And I'm going to try and find the float height, and I'm going to adjust the float before I do that. but I'm pretty sure that there was some little pieces of dirt or sand in that needle, which was making it want to just flow when you turn the pitcock on. So we'll go on to getting this put back together and bench test it. All right, it was out of adjustment. So you set the gauge at 16, which 1594 is close enough. And you've got this end here, which is what you measure with. And you measure. And you can see it there. Now I'm not going to be able to show you that it's perfect there, but it pretty much is. And you're supposed to do it on the side like that. And I'll try and get my hand out of the way. So it's on the side. Let it roll till it just hits. And that's pretty darn close. Usually they give you a like plus or minus 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. But this was way off. It was up like this. So I think that's going to make a big difference. It does not overflow anymore. So, problem fixed. But putting in the fuel screw, or I guess they call it the pilot screw, basically richens it, and in the low end, this screw right here. But when I put everything back together, I looked in there, there's a second O-ring. There were 2 of these O-rings, which that's not good. So I put the nicer of the 2 in there, and now it's back on the bike. All right, the carburetor is back on, and I've had the gas on for over 10 minutes, and I have no leakage. And what I did do when I had the chance, I had this shifter off, and I detailed it, and I detailed behind it. You try and do what you can. I know you kind of get excited and you want to go as fast as you can, get it running and all that. But I also did, there was a lot of that Yamaha lube or Honda seal. It's that gray gasket sealer all over that line. But I took the chance while I had it all on the rack, and I got all that off and made a nice clean look to it. So now we're gonna refire it, make sure it runs, maybe do a little tuning, but I doubt that. Just want to make sure it starts relatively easy and it runs and it idles. Well, this will be the end of the first part of the XR650 revitalization, restoration, whatever you'd like to call it. So we're basically going to go from this to a clean, street legal dual sport. All the parts are ordered that I can think of. Of course, there'll be numerous parts from that point on. And we've got pretty much all the mechanical issues taken care of. We've got a pretty good assessment of what mechanically the bike is good. It's just a lot of cosmetic work and restoration to bring it back to its original grandeur. And so this one's big enough for a guy named Joe over there in Shingletown. This is for a big guy, this 650. And boy, is it going to look beautiful when it's done. And it's going to be ready to go to Shingletown. So I will see you on this second part, part 2 of the XR500R restoration.